Hey, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Jungle Roar post-game pod here from Minneapolis, Minnesota, U.S. Bank Stadium, to be exact, where the Bengals suffered their worst loss in franchise history. I repeat, the Bengals have suffered a lot of bad losses in their history, never one as much of a blowout as by the margin we saw here this afternoon. 48-10 was the final score, with the Vikings coming out on top. Joining me on this Jungle Roar post-game pod, brought to you by Prize Picks and our friends at All Good Home Improvement, is, of course, Richard Skinny of Local 12 and Local12.com in Cincinnati. Skinny, you and me were both in the Bengals locker room post-game. And I don't know about you, but I got the tone that they were almost in shock a little bit, trying to process how they were beaten down by 38 points in this game. Now, after the game, Zach Taylor said it's pretty simple why we were beaten down. 5 turnovers, 2 interceptions, 3 lost fumbles. You're going to get historical issues, as he mentioned in the post-game press conference. But what was your impression when you first walked into the locker room post-game this afternoon?
No, they did look shell-shocked, Mike, and I think that's a great way to put it because, the turnovers created the margin and the ugliness of the loss. But there are other issues. This is 3 straight games now they haven't run the football. The second half, they got worked on the ground where Minnesota was gashing them. And, Zach talked about the dam broke. Yeah, okay, but, you're still allowed to make stops too. Jake Browning, I thought, said it really well in the postgame where he said, we got worked today. We have to sit in this and let it stew. And I think maybe that's the thing of, going back to the drawing board a little bit. They're talking about reworking the running game again. We'll probably get in that a little bit deeper. But, yeah, to your point, I think it was a lot of guys that the score was extraordinarily shocking because they felt like stole 2 games. And I don't think this was a relation to Joe Burrow not playing like there's, Daubers were down because of that. These guys, and we've all written it, and I think we all believe it. They believe in Jake Browning. I don't think it had anything to do with Joe Burrow's injury. Now, Joe playing wouldn't have hurt, obviously, but I don't think that was the carryover effect for all the turnovers and the miscues. And it did. I mean, Mike, it was 17-3 at the 2-minute warning.
Yep.
Bengals are at the Minnesota 36-yard line. They can make it 17-6, or they can maybe make it 17-10, and they get the ball coming out of the second half. The defense had actually played pretty well as the half went on, got some stops, forced some punts, all of those things. 7 of the 17 points were a pick 6. And just like that, it's 34-3 at halftime. I think that's the most shocking thing of how did that happen, and you can't recover from it. You just got to make sure that the last 30 minutes nothing crazy happens.
I really hope Justin Hill, the Bengals running back coach, pounds and pounds and pounds the Bengals running backs and the tight ends, everyone, because Justin Hill, I think, is primarily responsible for ball security drills on the Bengals, pounds them with the rock this coming week and maybe the week after that, for that matter. You cannot put the ball on the ground 5 times, lose 3 of those fumbles, and expect any type of result other than getting your ass handed to you.
Yeah, but only one of those fumbles was from a running back. I mean, Jamar Chase was fumbled.
Correct.
Jamar Chase was fumbled 6 times in his career. This was the 6th today. He fumbled. Noah Fant fumbled, the one that was taken back for a touchdown. And so I don't think it was a running back fumble issue. It was just a fumbleitis issue. I mean, the play by Samaje Perine is literally a run out the end of the clock play. Just call it a half. He loses control of it. They kick the 62-yard field, and that was on a running back. But
Chase Brown did fumble, but it bounced
right back to him.
Back to him.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. It was an ugly game, and I don't want to soft shoe this because I do want to talk about the run game issues and the run game defense issues. It was nice to see a pass rush today. At the end of the day, this only counts as one loss, and I don't think that should be lost. I mean, this league is weird. Listen, I know you're going to, as a fan, you're rolling your eyes and you want us pitchforks and all that. I think Mike might go more pitchforky than I will. But last Sunday night, in this very stadium that you and I are sitting in currently, 22-6, the Atlanta Falcons beat this team. The Atlanta Falcons then turn around, go on the road this week, and lose 30-0 to Carolina. How do you explain some of this stuff in the league? Sometimes you just can't.
Cleveland Browns, winless,
right.
Come from behind, score, 13 points in the final 4 minutes. They were trailing 10-0 with, 4.5 minutes to go in Cleveland, and they wind up winning the game. So to your point, Skinny, it's any given Sunday. This is only one loss, but I think what's concerning, and I'm going to focus on the run game right now.
Yes, yeah,
This
absolutely.
is three games that the Bengals have had their hats handed to them in terms of the physicality or the lack thereof at the point of attack. I always talk about the point of attack. And if you win the point of attack, a lot of good things are going to happen offensively, defensively. It doesn't matter. Well, when the Bengals have the ball, they are not moving defensive linemen around. They are just not. They're getting pushed back into the offensive backfield. And you're seeing Chase Brown not be able to get any type of momentum, not being able to get to that second level, which he mentioned post-game this afternoon. You've got to be able to get to that second level to get those explosive plays that the Bengals were getting a little bit of from Chase Brown in the second half of last year.
Yeah, and there was one run play in particular. Dylan Fairchild pulled through the hole, and Chase, you can see, is about to pop it. And all Dylan needs to do is, I don't think he needed to push the guy. He just needed to get in the guy's way, and he didn't. And instead of what could have been a long run, it turned into like a 2-yard gain. And, this is probably too simplistic. And I did ask this after the opener. I asked Zach this question, I think that either the next day or after the game. How much did they miss Lucas Patrick in the run game? And his answer was, you can't make the direct correlation. I don't know, man. That first drive in Cleveland, they looked pretty good when Lucas Patrick was in there and healthy. And the run games look like crap since. And it's a trickle-down effect. Like if one spot isn't doing its job, it hurts the next spot. And, then you wonder, is Chase Brown looking to get off of his tracks and try to find holes that aren't there as opposed to whatever is there? Just go ahead and take it. And that's it all marriages itself. I thought it was alarming after the game where Zach talked about, looking at the run game and maybe making some changes. They've done this before. They've ripped up the run game before, but you ripped up the run game in 22 to go to RPOs. You've gone from wide zone to pin and pull. You've gone back to wide zone. You thought you hit on some things last year. You changed the run game coordinator because you fired Frank Pollock. I mean, whose fault is this that you haven't? This isn't just a this year issue. This has been primarily the last handful of years. They can't run the ball efficiently.
There's no excuse for it, too, especially when you have the passing weapons that you supposedly have in Jamar Chase,
running the white boxes.
I mean, I don't understand it, and maybe Scott Peters, maybe certainly Dan Picture will have the opportunity again this week to explain that to us, and I'm sure he will attempt his very best to explain what the heck is going wrong. But I will give Chase Brown this much credit. He looked pissed off in the postgame. He was one of the few Bengals to look really agitated and upset. He dropped an F-bomb when he said, we've got to block out the noise, F what everybody else is telling us or thinks of us, F what, you and me are talking about right now. Obviously, there's going to be noise about the Bengals simply can't run the ball. And if that's going to be their offense, they're going to have really big-time problems. But Chase Brown is at least, I think, recognizing that there has to be more urgency. There has to be more of a drive to beat the man in front of you. And I haven't seen that the first 3 games, really.
Well, I mean, it makes you wonder that when you evaluate offensive linemen, whether it be in free agency or the draft, are you looking more at guys who can pass block before they can run block? And usually it's the opposite. Most guys can run block. Well, is Amarius Mims a better pass blocker than run blocker? Maybe. Was that Orlando Brown's forte to be better as a pass blocker? And I got to be honest with you, Orlando Brown doesn't look right at the moment. I mean, he's really struggled the first 3 weeks, and you pile that onto last year's injury issues. Dudes get old quickly in this league, and he just doesn't look right. So now we're talking about an offensive line where Dalton Reisner has really struggled at right guard. I don't think he got benched today. It was a calf injury, but then Zach said he could have gone back in the game. I think the right thing to do. He's hurt. You're getting crap beat out of you. Put Jalen Rivers in, get him some experience, get him some snaps. So I don't think I want to go that far as to say Dalton Reisner was benched. Mims is in his second year. The book's still out on him. Ted Karras is a okay center. He's more leader than center. And you got a rookie left guard. I think they've done things to address it, but is it addressing it simply to make sure you have pass blockers as opposed to run blockers? Because this, again, isn't just a this year issue. This has been consistent.
Bengals are averaging, Skinny, 49 yards a game on the ground. A game, 49 yards. That is dead last. And shouldn't surprise anybody. That is dead last. 32 out of 32 in the National Football League. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe we see a little bit more of the screen game. I'm wondering where the screen game is.
Yeah.
So there is one play in this game, and I think it was in the second quarter, where Jake Browning threw a really well-conceived screen for about, I want to say, 11 yards to Chase Brown. The blocking looked crisp on the outside from the wide receivers and the tight ends. And I'm like, why don't we see that more? Get Chase Brown in some space where he can do some damage.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. It's and in a game like today's where you were trying to keep Jake Browning in some efficient down and distance circumstances, he just wasn't. So then he's running for his life a lot of times on third down. Thirds and sevens are hard to make, and then he's forcing passes because he thinks he's got to make a play. And I think if he talked the right game today, I think he learned the lesson about the one to Chase Brown that was taken back for a touchdown. That I just got to throw the football away. But I get where you're at. You're down 10-0. You finally put together a drive. You're trying to quiet the noise. You see a receiver going down the field. You think you got him, and Harrison Smith just gets a fingertip on it to tip it, and then it's returned for a touchdown. And again, that ball probably even saying all that should have been thrown away. And I think
after the game, Skinny, not to interrupt here, but Zach Taylor said that pass actually was intended for Jamar Chase, and I raised my eyebrows, and I'm like, oh, really?
No, I don't.
I mean, that's what he said. I don't know if he goes back and looks at the film and goes, I misspoke on that. No, it was actually intended for Chase Brown. But anyway, your point's well taken.
Yeah, it's one of the chases. Let's just call it a chase. We'll call it a chase.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's the lesson. But if you're Jake, you're not running the ball. You're trying to make a play. I get that. I'm not excusing his performance because it wasn't 19 of 27, which sounds good for 140 yards. They didn't push it down the field. They couldn't push it down the field. T. Higgins had 2 targets, 1 catch. The offense feels a mess at the moment. Other than when you can force feed Jamar Chase, which they did last week, the offense feels a mess.
It really does. This episode of the Jungle Roar postgame pod is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. Prize Picks is also the best way to get action on sports in more than 40 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Prize Picks also offers injury reboots. If one of your players leaves the game in the first half and does not return, Prize Picks will not count it as a loss. Download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All right, back with Richard Skinner of Local 12 and local12.com in Cincinnati. The adjustments that need to be made at this point, at the halftime of this game, the game was over.
Yes,
all right, it was 34-3.
Yes.
But I think a lot of fans want to know, well, what could Zach Taylor do before the game got out of hand to maybe help his offense not get teed up by the secondary that was just pinning its ears back and going after the quarterback?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything. I mean, listen, like I said, you're 17-3. Your thought process with less than 2 minutes to go in the half is get some points here, get the opening kickoff of the second half, get some points, and now the pressure's on Minnesota that all of a sudden their 17-0 lead is down to 17-13, 17-9, 17-17 maybe even if you had doubled up with touchdowns. And in the blink of an eye, in a minute and 47 seconds, they score 17 points, all basically off of turnovers. That's almost mind-boggling at that point. I think at that point your mind is swimming of like, what just happened here? We were in a ball game, and now we're totally out of a ball game. And I think that's what you saw is just let's get the hell out of here and call it a day. And I don't blame anybody for that.
What about the lack of discipline, the penalties? And I'm going to give the Bengals the benefit of the doubt on a couple. There was a Dylan Fairchild hold that was pretty obvious when I went back and looked at it. At first glance on the replay, I'm like, well, it looked like 2 linemen, one defensive and Dylan Fairchild were hugging each other. But then it became pretty obvious that Dylan Fairchild got called for a hold on a first down pass from Browning to Jamar Chase at the sideline. I don't know if you recall the play, Skinny, but that was a big play, actually, I thought, in the first half. And then to start the game, the Bengals commit 3 penalties on the first 2 defensive snaps.
Yeah,
That can't happen.
the one on Dax
On
Hill
Dax Hill was
awful.
bad.
I mean, Adam
Yes,
Thielen sold that, and good for him, and shame on the official for buying that. That was a rotten call, to be quite frank. So I'm going to give
terrible.
them a
I
pass for
agree.
that. So, yeah, the one thing I think the hallmark of Zach Taylor teams or the fans want, they are usually a very well disciplined team. They don't hurt themselves with penalties a lot of times. They unfortunately hurt themselves with turnovers.
Yeah, and again, the ball security has got to be an issue. And Jake Browning, I believe it was, he had 4 interceptions in his first 3 full quarters in replacing Joe Burrow. That's a lot. And now, he had 3 against Jacksonville, 2 today against Minnesota. And I'm wondering if you're seeing anything in the way he's reading it, if he's rushing it, if he doesn't feel comfortable in the pocket and he feels like he needs to get rid of the ball before he really wants to.
Yeah, no, I didn't think he looked comfortable at all today. Really at any point. He had a couple of comfort throws, one to Jamar Chase over the middle that he looked like got on his back foot, was in rhythm, got it out of his hands. There was the one you talked about on that corner route to Chase where Chase comes wide open, makes a good throw. It was in rhythm, and you get called for a hold, and it gets called back. But for the most part, it felt like he was on that back foot, and the pass rush was there, and he was taking off and trying to make plays. I think he is an in rhythm passer who has to get it out of his hands quickly, needs to get it out of his hands quickly. And maybe that's just a progression thing. Maybe that's a play call thing where the first progression has been covered every time they've called it, and he's on his second progression. And at that point, here they are. They're in his face, and he's got to go get flushed and try to make a play out of it, and just can't.
Bengals lost this game 48-10.
Ooh.
But defensively, believe it or not, there were a couple of bright spots. Myles Murphy made a play. He chased down Carson Wentz.
Great play.
I believe it was to force a punt.
Yes.
It was actually kind of a big play when the game was still somewhat in doubt in the first half. And then Chris Jenkins. He had, I believe, 1.5 sacks. Joseph Osai got a half a sack credit on his second attack of the quarterback. But those two guys, at least they showed up. They're starting to show something. Well, Chris Jenkins, I think, has been showing consistency, but they need more out of Myles Murphy, especially with Shamar Stewart, being inactive today, being injured.
Yeah, I mean, when the game was still a game, those guys made some plays when it mattered and kept you in the game a little bit. And so that was it. Yeah, if there was a positive, that was good to see. I'd like to see more of it. But maybe that's a good step in the right direction for all 3 of those guys, really.
Speaking with Richard Skinner, both of us are here on location at US Bank Stadium following a 48-10 Bengals loss to the Minnesota Vikings. Want to tell you about All Good Home Improvement. All Good has been helping homeowners for 32 years. When looking for a home improvement company, the number one quality they are looking for is trust. For the last 32 years, All Good has been trusted to help homeowners replace their windows, install new vinyl siding, install new gutters, and professionally install a new roof. I want to also talk about getting your home ready for winter with energy-efficient windows, a roof inspection, or even a gutter inspection. They would be glad, more than happy, to come out and do a free inspection to see if your home is ready for the winter months. All of All Good's products are professionally installed and backed by both a material and labor warranty. To schedule a free in-home consultation, you can call 513-247-2900. Again, call 513-247 or 2900, or you can go to myallgoodhome.com. Back to wrap things up here from US Bank Stadium following an embarrassing 48-10 loss to the Minnesota Vikings for the Bengals. They're still 2-1. It's one loss. The Steelers won on Sunday afternoon. The Browns won, and we'll see what the Ravens do on Monday night against the Detroit Lions. But the Bengals are still at the top of the division. There's no reason to panic unless you think, of course, Skinny, that the first 3 games, the Bengals offense just doesn't look right. And that's, to me, the bigger worry.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I wrote kind of that after the first game, like, hey, don't worry. This was just a bad matchup with Cleveland. It's been a bad matchup the last 3 years up there. And you know what this offense was about. And that's also when Joe Burrow was healthy, mind you. And again, I'm not pinning this on Jake Browning, but you know my point. But now it's 3 games in, and you had a great game from Jamar Chase in game 2. You were plucky to come back, and Jake, sucked it up after the 3rd interception. But you just haven't looked consistently good. consistently comfortable. And I think it all goes back to the run game. You're just in terrible down and distance circumstances at the moment. And that was kind of the way in Cleveland too. And that has to get fixed quickly. I mean, quickly. That's what will end up having this season slide away. To your point earlier, this is only one. So at halftime, I looked it up. This was I think the second time the Bengals trailed by 31 points, the most they've ever trailed by in a half at halftime. The last time occurred in 1970 against the Detroit Lions in Week 2. Well,
I remember that game.
That 1970
no,
team.
I don't.
I thought you actually might. 1970, they also bounced back and made it to the playoffs.
Sure did.
So, I mean, that's the thing in this league. You can't let one loss like this get compounded. And it can. We've seen it happen to teams. You start spiraling out of control, and you just can't stop it. You have a chance Monday night to stop that very quickly, or it starts to snowball, because then after that game come the Lions, come the road game with the Packers, and you start to see things slide away. This is an important week to get ready for Denver and go to Denver. This turned into what could have been today hey, you're 3-0, and if you go to Denver, you're playing with a little bit of house money, and then, okay, you're coming back home for Detroit. Now it's, oh, boy, you're in a spot of the schedule where this could snowball in a freaking hurry.
My concern with the Bengals is that they've built so much around Joe Burrow and the offense as the identity of this team that now they need to lean on the defense. They really do need to lean on the defense. They need to play complementary football. And to play complementary football, Skinny, to play keep away from the other team, especially on the road when you're facing Skull and those chants and you can't hear yourself think, you need to be able to run the ball. You need to be able to win at the line of scrimmage. And I don't think this Bengals team is built that way. They are built to pass, throw in an occasional run, throw in an occasional screen, and they've got to change on the run. To me, if I'm Zach Taylor, if I'm Dan Picture, that is the challenge. That's the objective in the next, certainly 2 weeks, as we face Denver and Detroit.
Yeah, no question. And I think that part of it is you've got to take care of the football. That's the main thing. I mean, if you're going to change from, okay, we're built around this high-powered offense that maybe isn't quite as high-powered for various reasons, because the quarterback's hurt, offensive line struggling to run block. Teams are dictating coverage that's putting you in tough spots. You're allowed to win games in this league 17-13. I mean, let's not forget today. Today, if Minnesota's offense didn't take a step on the field today, if it didn't take a single snap, they win today's game 14-10 because you made mistakes, and 2 of them that were returned for touchdowns. That's the thing you can't do either, is if you're going to play that way, that's fine. I get it. It's probably the right way to play, but you can't make mistakes because you're not good enough at the moment offensively to overcome that stuff.
And you certainly can't make mistakes in a hostile environment on the road. And Jake Browning has 1 road win in his career as a starting quarterback, and that was at Jacksonville. It was a terrific game, that Monday night game, 34-31. But he is now 4-4 as a starter, and 3 of those 4 wins have been at Paycor Stadium. He's going to have to, obviously learn how to win, learn how to handle the noise. Zach Taylor, and when I asked Jake Browning about this after the game, they said noise really wasn't the issue. They were able to get into their offense pretty efficiently here this afternoon. But as you said, Skinny, they just didn't take care of the ball. No,
I mean, 5 turnovers are going to get you beat probably anywhere you play, let alone on the road.
What are you working on for local12.com?
I'm using Jake Browning's quote of it. We got worked, and it said Bengals quarterback says team got worked, and boy, does it have a lot to work on. And it does. I mean, it's got a lot to work on, and it starts right away this week.
I'm going to be writing about the attitude of the offensive line. It's got to start in the trenches. If this team wants to break out or just put this hideous loss behind them, they've got to be more physical. Yes, Chase Brown was upset. He wants the team to be more physical. He wants to get to the second level, but he knows that unless this team gets more physical in the trenches, they're not going to win games with or without Joe Burrow. He is Richard Skinner, does a fabulous job covering the Cincinnati Bengals for Local 12 and local12.com. Be sure to follow all of his stuff there. I'll have the latest on the Cincinnati Bengals up on clnscincy.com, including the takeaways from today's loss here in Minnesota. And be sure to follow me on the X for all of the locker room reaction at Trags, Trags. Want to thank our sponsors as always. That would be Prize Picks and All Good Home Improvements. And until next week, Monday Night Football from Denver, he is Richard Skinner. I'm Mike Petraglia, Trags. Keep that jungle roaring.